So, I mean, Cyberpunk already looked really good, especially with ray tracing. Like, this is one of those cool things. It's like my favorite thing about new games and new generations of hardware is that you'll go from the game like not looking bad. You looked really good, and you're like, I don't know how they would improve this. Honestly, it looks really good. And then they drop updates like this, which we're going to look at, this overdrive ray tracing, which calculates every light beam in the scene. And you don't realize just how bad the rasterized render looked until you see the side-by-side. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Just look at this stuff.
Mode. All of these typical rasterization issues and more that can be found throughout almost...
And like the realistic bloom, you can see here like the light on the backside, especially of the garbage can. You can tell that it's subtle, but my goodness, it makes a difference. This is one of those moments where like, okay, I don't know. I think one person who has said this is in the chat right now. Okay, so I'm not trying to like attack you or trigger you or be mean, okay? But I did see somebody say that ray tracing is a scam, which, no offense, okay, offense, is like one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. For one, I don't think you know what the word scam means, because that's like a deceptive fraud. It's something where you know you're lying to somebody and you're selling them snake oil and you do it anyways, right? So for me to say this is a scam is just like super stupid. And as you can see, there is a quantifiable difference. Now, if the argument is, hey, it's less useful than like maybe if they were to put all this effort into AI, you know, all of the tech and stuff into AI. Okay, but that's a different argument. If you're just going to say, hey, I think it would be more useful in this other space, like that's okay, that's one thing. But to say it's a scam is just ridiculous. It's just outrageous. Yeah, and this is a free update, okay? They're not even charging like $5 for this. This is something like PlayStation would sell you for $10. But CDPR is just coming out and tossing this to us for free, which is, again, why I've said CDPR has done a lot of work to try and win back favor after the terrible launch. I still don't give them the benefit of the doubt, because what they did with Cyberpunk 2077 was like borderline criminal. It was bad. Okay. Like, I don't know how you just hand wave away what they did with CP 2077, because it was that bad. They knew it was a broken pile of garbage and they didn't care. So, I haven't forgiven them yet, but this stuff does start to really impress me, if I'm being real.
Almost any modern game are eliminated, as almost all of the rasterization techniques are thrown out the window here in terms of how lighting is calculated for opaque objects. I probably do not need to say too much here versus the original rasterized lighting, as it is quite obvious in the examples I'm going to
Jeez, like that versus this. Crazy. Like, and even like the boots. Look at his boots. The boots down on the ground versus the shadows cast realistically off of them. This is what ray tracing can do. Like, actually create realistic lighting that will make the games look night and day way better. Problem is, it's extremely computationally intensive. It takes a ridiculous amount of power to do this. And all of this is running off of an RTX 4090, which in the previews NVIDIA shared only ran at like 16 FPS without DLSS on. So this is not something you're going to be able to run with probably even a 4080 realistically. Unless you're running like, again, a $5,000 computer. You're probably not going to get to try this or see this for a few a few graphics card generations. Realistically, it's just very intensive.
Screen right now, I mean, just look at the differences here. Basically, Overdrive will fully transform the visuals that still had their roots in last gen into those visuals that we can expect for the next generation of game engines. It is truly a completely different looking game with Overdrive ray tracing versus the rasterized lighting before. That's not too shocking though, given what we've seen in the last few years. Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition or even Fortnite with
Wow.
Lumen have similarly shown what a big difference ray trace lighting can make to games that just use rasterize.
Yeah, like again, you don't realize you don't realize how bad, and not even bad, but just like how much better this looks. Because again, Cyberpunk didn't look bad on max settings before. It really didn't look bad. It looked pretty good. But then you see it with the realistic ray tracing. You're like, oh my God. Okay, I get it now. You got me. You know, oh man, I love this. I love this so much because it makes you just reset all of your expectations. And then you start to, it's a taste of the forbidden fruit. And once you've tasted that forbidden fruit, everything else looks like trash. Garbage. Oh man.
Lighting before. Beyond its comparison to the rasterized graphics, the overdrive setting also shows differences that are quite large when compared to the previous Psycho ray tracing setting that the game has had since launch.
Always look in the boots. The boots hold the answer. You can see the difference. Delicate boots. Man. Oh, baby.
I mean, just look at the difference here between Psycho ray tracing and the new overdrive mode. Both are using ray tracing, so why does the overdrive mode look so different and so much better? There are two reasons for that. The first is that the Psycho ray tracing setting still used a lot of rasterized lighting in its visual makeup. The second reason for the profound visual difference is because Psycho ray tracing setting of old was made up of a number of disparate techniques that on their own try to improve graphical realism, but since it's a variety of techniques coming together, they could be more limited than a holistic solution. A good example can be found with how local
Yeah, just look at that. Wow.
lighting is done with the Psycho ray tracing setting. All local lights that were not
Yeah, and even just, this was with Psycho ray tracing. Remember we tested that when I got the 4090? We like put it through its paces to see what it was like. And you don't even realize, like, these shadows aren't cast on this. Even on Psycho ray tracing, they just wouldn't cast shadows on certain objects. It's like when I tried the ray tracing on the Witcher 3 update, next gen update, and that like still looked pretty good, but it didn't cast shadows on like tree trunks, it didn't cast shadows on all sorts of stuff. And now, like, with these universal overdrive ray tracing, comparisons, you see just what it looks like when everything is ray traced. I'm waiting to see, like, when's the boot going to drop? Are there any downsides other than it being extremely heavy?
neon in the environment were just done with rasterization. It was just that their shadows could be ray traced. The nature of that technique meant that many lights were still non-shadow casting, like we see here. Another big issue with the Psycho ray tracing setting was that indirect lighting was still done with rasterized lighting, in the form of image-based lighting probes. There was a limited...
When are consoles getting this? Realistically, I'm just going to be real with you. I don't see this coming to consoles this generation. Maybe not even, like... I don't think we'd even see this necessarily on a PlayStation 5 Pro. Because it's just so heavy. I mean, again, like, this thing runs like ass without DLSS and all this other stuff turned on a 4090. And do you, like, the 4090 is a $1,500 graphics card. Unless the PS5 Pro is like $1,000 or $1,500, I don't see how they could reasonably compete with this. You know, I really don't. Morton, this is just a marketing gimmick. I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves. I'm not saying everybody should go out and buy a 4090 to do this. Obviously not. This is a privilege of those who spend ridiculous amounts of money on their hardware. But like, I can see this being used, sure, to hype up NVIDIA graphics cards and things, but there is a quantifiable and very visual difference in what this is capable of doing. To me, it's not as much of a marketing gimmick as like the 3D audio that Sony tried to introduce with the PS5 that's gone nowhere. Nobody's implemented it. This is something where it's like, if you have the hardware and you can run it, man, it makes games look totally different.
single bounce of ray trace lighting from the sun, but the rest of the indirect lighting, including the sun lighting, was still done with that very coarse raster technique. That left the Psycho ray tracing setting having the same issues as that technique has in any other game.
Jeez,
it was just
dude.
that ray traced ambient occlusion would try and limit the issues to a degree. There was still a lot of light leaking and weirdness going on though. Hence why that scene that I showed off earlier with the Psycho ray tracing looked so odd.
3D audio is great. So I've tried 3D audio stuff, okay? And you guys know me. I'm a wee bit of an audiophile. I have a good amount of very nice audio equipment that I like to experiment with. I don't tend to talk about it much in videos because, frankly, in my experimentation, whenever I talk about audio stuff in videos, people skip through it because I can see when people skip through the video at different points. And whenever I talk about audio stuff, people tend to skip through it because I think most people just generally don't care, or they don't have the nicer audio stuff. So they're like, what's the point of listening to you ramble about it? That being said, I have not heard an implementation of 3D audio that was so much better than what they've accomplished with some other means and systems that, like, I really just don't see the necessity.
Treble Champ super chatted $6.
Thank you, Treble.
We have to remember this is a bolt-on to an existing engine. We engines include RTPT from the ground up. It won't have to raster, then add this on top.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we are looking at something that was tacked on to a game that released almost going on 3 years ago. So you're right. It's not like they built this rendering pipeline for this exclusively. And maybe one day if we have consoles that can do that, we'll see engines like that. Naughty Dog throwing something like that out.
Brandon Reyes super chatted $9.99.
Thank you, my friend.
Moving into my own place, my girl soon, and will be a spare room, and it feels like I'm transcending into a real man now that I will have a room meant just for gaming.
Yeah, oh man, it's a special feeling. You got to deck it out, get the man cave going. You get the cooler in the background where you have all of your Red Bull and beers and stuff. Yeah, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. For me, I don't really do the beers anymore. I do the Cayman Jack margaritas. Ooh, man, they're good. But congrats. That's exciting. That's awesome.
Overdrive ray tracing takes a different approach altogether. Instead of a bunch of disparate techniques, it does nearly all the lighting in 2 passes that work in a principally different way. So first you have the direct lighting. That is things from like artificial lights, neon signs, the sky. And instead of rasterized lights combining with diffused ray traced emissives here, these aspects are now handled through RTX DI, which does both specular and diffuse direct lighting. And instead of ray traced ambient occlusion, ray traced reflections, and those rasterized image-based lighting probes that I talked about earlier for indirect lighting, all those things are superseded and replaced by a restir GI pass, which handles bounce lighting not just from the sun like before, but every single light and illuminated surface in the game. This means nearly all of the game's direct lighting now and indirect lighting is done through ray tracing. And in many ways, like a pure path tracer would, where each point you see in the world is the sum of multiple paths of bounced light. Due to these paths being traced multiple times, it produces images that are quite different than before. So one of the first big changes from the previous ray tracing mode,
so
and of
good,
course
dude.
the rasterization, is that
My question is, like, this makes sense for an open world game. My question is, how does this work for, like, does this even make sense for a more linear game like The Last of Us? You know, if they come out with that, with a sequel to that, or whatever Naughty Dog's next game is, or Hellblade, or one of those, because this is impressive, but it works really well for dynamic situations. If you can just bake in all of this lighting stuff by itself, you could get this quality in a console version of a game pretty comfortably, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, I want to see some faster paced gameplay. Yeah, we'll probably see that. I think they should. A lot of this is side-by-side stuff. I think it's more, this video is more showcasing what it's capable of. Oh, they show some combat at the end. But this is definitely a more of a tech demo than something practical for most people. Like, it'll look really good in screenshots, but I don't think it'll be super practical to actually use it. Chris, we are staying on YouTube, not moving to Twitch. We're staying on YouTube streaming. We've been baking ray tracing since 1998. Yeah, but like I don't think it was like full global illumination ray tracing has not been baked into 99% of games. Like for some stuff you can bake some stuff like that in, but for most games I don't think they're getting any sort of baking or baked light quite like this. Especially if there's a day-night cycle, you can't really do that. You know? Kazuma, am I banned? I don't think so. Should you be? I don't know. Should you be? I don't know.
That every light emitting thing in the world now.
Also, just as I'm going to turn on the AC unit because it's getting really hot in here. So just like forgive the light in the background. Okay, sorry.
Cast shadows from objects nearby. This is pretty unheard of in games, as even those games with ray trace shadows tend to limit the amount of shadow casting lights. That is why the previous Psycho ray trace setting in this scene here looks the way it does. The nature of how shadows were traced means it would be too expensive to have every light like these here be shadow casting. But with the overdrive mode, lighting is being traced itself, and per pixel soft shadows naturally extend from the geometry, getting in the way as a byproduct of the technique. This enables every light to be shadow casting, and it's a big deal in Cyberpunk where you occupy a city with tons of little and big lights everywhere. And as I always will point out, yes, the overdrive setting enables muzzle flash shadows that are ray traced. And
dude, that's awesome. Muzzle flash shadows. That's freaking awesome.
yes, they are glorious. The other big benefit with the overdrive setting is how indirect lighting is completely different. Check out this scene here with the previous Psycho ray tracing setting. That one local light at the end of the alley is casting shadows, but the shadowed areas are pretty dark and actually rather gray-blue colored. That is because the local lights do not bounce light around the scene with Psycho ray tracing. The bounce lighting is done with those rasterized, image-based lighting probes, which are, as we know, prone to great inaccuracy. With ray tracing overdrive turned on, now multiple bounces of light are occurring from local lights. So that orange light is bouncing around the scene here, and it inflects the color of each and every shadow there. And this bounce lighting also occurs for specular lighting. So if we look at the reflection of the dumpster here in the original Psycho mode, the dumpster is reflected, but it is shaded in that reflection with the older indirect lighting system, making it gray and dark. With overdrive, there are two bounces of specular lighting occurring. So the reflections now showcase bounce lighting in them, giving the reflection a more accurate look. This is a big thing for Cyberpunk 2077 because of how much of the game takes place at night and indoor. Every single light contributes to global illumination, giving such scenes at times a mirror's edge look. And it's not just static lights like I've been showing off. Even car headlights will contribute to GI. In the old Psycho mode, the car headlights hit the wall and the light stops there. In the overdrive mode, the light hits the wall and bounces around the scene. And in this case, the bounce lighting from the car's headlights is tinged blue due to it bouncing off of a blue shipping container. The second part of
Yeah, like again, very little, very subtle, and for a lot of people, they won't give a crap. And that's okay. If you don't mind this level of like minutia and tiny detail, I'm honestly jealous. Like, because if you don't mind that, then you're going to save a lot of money. But like, if you're one of those people that needs the latest and greatest, the highest end, whatever, you're about to have to fork out some extra cash.
the bounce lighting now being done via ray tracing is that all the artifacts from the previous bounce lighting are gone. There are no more big chunky blocks of incorrectly shaded geometry found in the bounce lighting like there was before.
Again, this was something that was really, really common in Cyberpunk just because Cyberpunk has so many like overpasses and walkways and stuff that cause this sort of artifacting. Whereas on like The Witcher 3 or something, you're not going to have that anywhere near as often because you're always outside, right? So, but Cyberpunk really, while it can showcase some really good high fidelity stuff, it can also showcase many of the problems with modern lighting engines and stuff. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword.
Now just smooth per pixel gradients that don't look out of place. NPCs also no longer kind of have that white edge glow to their skin. Yep, that happened in the rasterized graphics and Psycho ray tracing mode before due to the usage of image-based lighting.
That was one of the most annoying things, is it looked like every character was always glowing. It was really, really weird, but now you can see that almost entirely goes away.
And boy, do those NPCs look a lot better now. And lastly, sunlight and skylight bouncing around the scene via ray tracing will also give those areas affected by their indirect lighting a quite stronger and contrastier look than before, where the old IBL system kind of turned shadow regions into this almost unlit gray-blue look. So yeah, the new overdrive lighting is the real deal and levels up the game considerably. The art assets I always thought were really great before, but now they look particularly stunning given that the lighting is much more consistent and physically based. As you can imagine though, tracing the paths of light multiple times has a very significant performance cost.
Here we go. This is the part I'm really interested in. How bad does it hurt performance?
For real-time graphics. To give you a sense of what I mean, turning on overdrive mode at native 4K, which is an absolutely ridiculous amount of rays being traced per pixel given how multiple paths are being traced here, well, that brings down performance in this scene here to 18 FPS on an RTX 4090. Yes, an RTX 4090 with all the special path traced might that GPU normally shows. Obviously, that would not be a good playable experience. The way to make it playable is the same way it is in many other games. Use DLSS. For example, going down to DLSS performance mode puts the game already in an extremely playable territory on this GPU, 59 FPS, and then turning on DLSS 3 frame gen on top of that brings the scene up to 95 FPS for much higher visual fluidity, as I've shown off in my review of DLSS 3. This video used a mix of settings for the comparisons, but all of the B-roll was done in DLSS in performance mode, and that's how I played the game, and I think it looks incredible. And the moment-to-moment gameplay frame generation from DLSS 3 also further increases that fluidity beyond what I can reasonably show in this video, and when I do get my hands on this patch in full, that would be the way I would want to play it.
And I'm telling you, if you've never gotten to experiment with the frame generation stuff on the 40 series cards, it's outrageous. Like, it really does feel like magic. You flip a switch and it will just like add 50 frames. It's outrageous. It's stupid efficient. It works very, very well. And I mean, any game that has it and it allows you to turn it on, I'd turn it on because it's just so much better. It's crazy.
Well, there you have it. Here's our short video covering our technical preview of Cyberpunk 2077's Overdrive Ray Tracing mode. Really impressive stuff that even in its technically unfinished form, as you've seen in this video, shows some amazing promise for the future. And with that being said, I hope you liked this video, and if you did like it, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, hit that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. If you want to support more content like this in the future, support us on Patreon to get years.
Man, it looks so good. Wow. Do you think Spider-Man 2 will show the full power of the PS5? Maybe not the full power. It'll definitely do a lot. It's going to look really good and run well, I'm sure. But I'm waiting for Naughty Dog to really showcase it. I think they're going to make it look the best. Frankly. My dear, that's what I expect. Which makes me wonder, why is frame gen exclusively tied to DLSS on? That I don't know. There might be a good reason for that, but I would not know it. That's a good point. I don't know. The Rodden, thank you for becoming a member. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Not after The Last of Us PC port. Yeah, for real. He took my thing.